Right, so I know things are feeling tense right now. And every few weeks, it seems like the orange potato decides to poke fun at a different part of the world and see what happens. It was Venezuela before, Canada before that, and now it's focused on Greenland. So much of the world is probably feeling on edge right now, especially after the orange guy announced tariffs on countries that aren't supporting the US takeover of Greenland. I don't know about you guys, but what kind of man-child behavior is this? And this is coming from the President of the United States. But has anyone noticed how the media talk about the Epstein files has suddenly died down? Just saying. So today we're going to talk all about Greenland. I know my channel is primarily focused on Canadian point of view, but Greenland and Denmark are our friends. And we also have a lot of viewers from both countries. So today's video, I'm going to support my friends, and we're going to go through a few reports from CBC, the BBC, as well as REUTERS, to break down the latest round of the orange potato's radical antics. So stick around for this one. Today's backdrop was sent in by Canadian Grammy from our Discord server. She sent over this photo from Overlander Falls in British Columbia. Thanks for sharing this amazing shot from BC in our Discord server. I'll talk about the orange guy's tariffs on the European nations in a bit. But first, I want to make sure that everyone is caught up on what's going on with the Greenland situation. Let's start off with the CBC report.
Well, the future of Greenland remains uncertain today after that high-stakes meeting in Washington yesterday failed to produce a constructive agreement. U.S. President Donald Trump is standing firm that Greenland must be under American control and that it needs the island for security. On the ground in Greenland, we are already seeing European nations boosting security there. You're looking at troops from Denmark arriving in Greenland's capital, Nuuk. France says it is also sending troops and has them on the ground there. The Netherlands will also join NATO allies that include Sweden, Germany, Finland, and Norway in a Danish-led military exercise in the Arctic territory.
Denmark, France, the Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, Finland, and Norway. All of these countries are sending troops to Greenland for a quote-unquote exercise. Let's be honest, we know it's not really about an exercise. This is about preparation. Preparation for whatever the orange potato decides to do when he rolls out of bed. As of now, I haven't seen anything yet on whether Canada's going to be sending troops, but I'm sure we'll hear it over the next few days. But even though the military presence from each of the countries is relatively small, this move sends a very clear message to the US administration. And the message is, if you want to invade Greenland, these countries are ready to support their NATO ally. I can't believe I'm honestly talking about this. The United States, our once best friend, is now threatening to invade Greenland. I always have to repeat it to myself because it mind boggles me that it's actually true. And now European nations are sending in troops. It's only been a year, and I honestly feel like I've already forgotten what a normal, everyday world feels like. Am I the only one that feels this way? Or does anyone else listening here right now feel the same way as well? Let me know in the comments below.
And journalist Ross Cullen is in Nuuk. He brings us the latest.
The picture after those talks is not particularly constructive because there has been no change in the positions by Denmark, Greenland or the United States. Denmark still feeling that overall pressure on this self-governing territory, part of the Kingdom of Denmark, from the United States. Those repeated push by Donald Trump to say that the United States will seize or take control of, acquire or buy this island from Denmark, despite Denmark pushing back against that, and the Greenlandic people certainly are worried and are concerned about that. What lies ahead is it will be further talks. If you look at what the Greenlandic foreign minister said yesterday after the talks in Washington, Vivian Motzfeldt, she said that there are going to have to be higher level talks. So you can imagine if that's above foreign minister level, that might well be the Greenlandic Prime Minister, the Danish Prime Minister, and potentially the President Donald Trump as well.
Both Denmark and Greenland's Prime Minister are now needing to talk to the man-child. We all know how that's going to go. While all of this is happening, I know there are millions of US citizens who oppose this. People who do not believe the United States should be taking anyone over. There are people actively standing up against the regime, protesting, trying to make a difference, and trying to be heard. But it doesn't help when the White House Twitter account is posting something like this. Let me read it out to you. Now, after centuries, it's time for Denmark to give back. World peace is at stake. China and Russia want Greenland, and there's not a thing Denmark can do about it. The United States of America is immediately open to negotiation with Denmark and or any of these other countries. Well, White House and man-child, the only real threat to Greenland right now is you and your country, the United States of embarrassment. Yeah, I stole that from the woman in the UK video. But not all US citizens are opposed to these radical moves by the man-child. Take a look at this tweet from an Orange Guy supporter. It says, "To be honest, these few folks from Greenland almost make me feel sorry for them. I just don't get what they see in this tiny Danish territory, stuck under the grip of wicked Europe, instead of throwing themselves in the arms of the USA." So what do I have to say to this? I'm sorry, but your country isn't as good as you think it is. And the rest of the world is actually laughing at the chaos within your borders. The United States' true colors are coming out, even through its citizens. And comments like this aren't going to stop. They're going to continue long after the orange potato is in the ground.
You can see that life is going about as normally this morning. People are on their way to work. People are driving into work. Children off to school as well. So despite that, though, there is this uncertainty hanging over the island. We do know now that Denmark has asked for reinforcements and France is sending troops. Germany, Sweden and Norway as well, sending a selection of military advisors and special mountain reconnaissance teams and polar monitoring teams to the island as part of a new European military mission to reinforce that security and show that Denmark and the wider European Union and other European allies like Norway and the United Kingdom are taking security in Europe's high north seriously.
So all of this is happening within the last 48 hours. And I'm sure we're potentially going to hear more countries or more troops being sent to Greenland. Now I want to move outside of North America and get the BBC's take on what's happening directly from Europe.
So what you can see over there is a Danish naval vessel. It regularly patrols Greenland. The coast here is fundamental to defense. What they're looking out for is suspicious activity over or underwater. So ships, Donald Trump has spoken of Chinese or Russian ones, you don't see them here, or under the water, submarines, like Russian submarines, for example. But apart from them, what you have is the arrival now of troops and vessels from other European NATO allies, including the UK, Germany and France. Now, they say they're coming here as part of a regular exercise, but the speed at which they've arrived absolutely coincides with Donald Trump's loud insistence that he wants Greenland for the United States, and he hasn't ruled out taking it by force.
Now, I'm just thinking out loud here, and maybe some of the viewers from the United States can chime in on this. But is the US military actually on board with all of this takeover talk? And I'm not talking about the generals that the man-child handpicked. I'm talking about the soldiers, the people who would actually be on the battlefield. I'll be honest, I know nothing about war or military. I'm a freaking amateur YouTuber who's in the tech industry and has a loud cat. Anything military is way outside of my realm. And I say amateur YouTuber because I'm not a professional. So for all of you thinking I need to be more professional, sorry, my channel's not for you. Anyways, if I was in the military, I don't think I would feel comfortable with all of this. I know you can be court-martialed for disobeying orders, but you still have to wonder what the regular members of the US military are thinking right now. I mean, I'm sure some of them probably immigrated to the US from places like Greenland and Denmark. So how do you even process potentially invading the place where you were born? Just something to think about.
Denmark is extremely relieved that its European allies in NATO are supporting it over Greenland. The hope is that all of their presence here will make it a lot more awkward for Donald Trump to take this island by force, if that's what he chooses to do, though it would be hard to stop him.
This is a president who makes his own foreign policy. He said recently, towards the end of the year, no one can stop me. He feels unchecked. He feels unbounded, and thus Greenland surged onto his agenda in recent times, but it's an old obsession of his. In his first term, he was talking about Greenland. At the time, his advisors kind of poo-pooed it and just tried to call his attention to other issues. He's come back to it. He's serious about it, and therefore the unpredictability here, and I would say the danger, remains high.
Yeah, I mean, that might shift, of course, after the midterms in November, but November is a long way away if you're Denmark. Can you see a scenario where US troops and European troops might come face to face?
No, right now I cannot see that. I think that Donald Trump has not really thought clearly through what that would really look like, what its implications would be for U.S. security and how it would present to the world. He's acting here by gesture, by instinct, by impulse.
I also hope that the US and European soldiers never have to face each other. But the man-child might just be puffing his chest out right now. And the problem is you can't predict what a lunatic will do or what orders he might give. The scarier part about Manchild's second term is that there's zero people in his administration who would tell him, hey Donnie, this might not be a good idea. Maybe we should shelf it. That's exactly why the Manchild's cabinet is far more dangerous than his first. He surrounded himself with people who will always say yes. He also has a loudspeaker named Caroline Levitt, spreading the message and gaslighting the world. I never thought I'd say this, but I almost miss the days when Sarah Huckabee Sanders was the mouthpiece, and I feel disgusted even saying that. But like I always say when it comes to tourism, you can't rely on history, and that applies here as well. Manchild 1.0 still had people around him that would tone things down. Now, you got people like Kristi Noem, Marco Rubio, that Secretary of War dude, the one who always looks like he's on something. I can't remember his name. And plenty of others who would just agree with everything that the Manchild wants. And that's what makes his version so much more dangerous. Now, to give some credit to a few US Congress members, a delegation has gone to Denmark to show their support for Greenland.
As I mentioned, the group of lawmakers from the US Congress are now in Copenhagen. In the last few minutes, we've been hearing from the Democratic Senator Peter Welch. He is part of that delegation, and he's been speaking about his support for Danish sovereignty over Greenland.
We're reinforcing our support, complete support for the sovereignty and right of self-determination of Greenland. We're here to reassert our appreciation for the role Denmark plays in our national security. We want to stand up and make a stronger, not a weaker NATO. So this is just an expression by a bipartisan group of members of Congress that we appreciate Denmark. We need Denmark, and we support a continuation of our cooperative relationship.
Now, I'll give them credit for flying over to show support. But what is this actually going to do to fix the problem in the White House? To me, this kind of feels like sending a Hallmark card to Denmark in person saying, we support you. I think people want to see action, not just words. Actions inside your own country. Fly to Washington, not Denmark. Fix the problem within your own borders. I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of a Danish or Greenland citizen. Or maybe to make it simpler, imagine if this was Canada being targeted. I'd probably go to the US congressman and say, great, thanks for the support. But what are you actually going to do about your country trying to take over ours? Maybe I'm just a bit bitter about this because I've heard too much government word salad. But it feels a lot like the delegations that came to Canada, trying to convince Canadians to go back to the US. Except this time the message is basically, we hope our president doesn't take over your country. Let me know in the comments if I'm off base on this one, or if you agree with me. Personally, I would rather see real action or something meaningful happen in Congress instead of a thoughts and prayers visit. Now, just announced within the last 24 hours, the man-child has threatened each of the nations stepping up for Greenland with more tariffs. A classic move from a classless narcissist.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Saturday vowed to implement a wave of increasing tariffs on European allies until the United States is allowed to buy Greenland, escalating a diplomatic rift over the Arctic island even as protesters there marched in support of self-determination.
In my opinion, this needs to continue from Greenland citizens as much as possible. Physically showing that you do not want to be part of the fascist exceptionalism country is the only way to show the world that you're not going to take this kind of bully treatment. I honestly would love to know how many Greenland citizens took part in these protests compared to their total population. I haven't looked it up yet, but it would be interesting to see.
In a post on Truth Social, Trump said additional 10% import tariffs would take effect on February 1st on goods from Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Finland, and Great Britain, all already subject to tariffs imposed by Trump. Those tariffs would increase to 25% on June 1st and would continue until a deal was reached for the U.S. to purchase Greenland, Trump wrote.
Who wants to bet that he'll tackle on these tariffs? My guess is that he'll tackle within a month. I honestly can't believe that we have a US president openly saying that he wants to purchase a country and that he won't stop until he gets it. And that brings me to this bigger question. How can people still support this country? I'll get into that a little bit more at the end of the video, maybe in my rant.
Leaders of both Denmark and Greenland have insisted the island is not for sale and does not want to be part of the United States. A sentiment voiced by protesters in Nuuk on Saturday.
We are not interested in being Americans.
Trump has repeatedly said Greenland is vital to U.S. security because of its strategic location and large mineral deposits, and has not ruled out taking the autonomous territory of Denmark by force. Citing threats from Russia and China, Trump has repeatedly insisted he will settle for nothing less than ownership.
This is just ridiculous. Continuing to blame the takeover on security concerns because of China and Russia makes no sense. The only country right now that is an actual threat is the one trying to take over Greenland. And yet, I'm sure the 77 million who voted for this mess are fully on board and fully believe that China and Russia are the threat. But not only that they are a threat, but that the US is going to take over Greenland. Just like this racist guy, Stephen Miller, his wife. A picture of Greenland with the US flag all over it. We need to remember this. Not all US citizens are opposed to this. Many of them are actively waiting for an invasion.
European nations have recently sent military personnel to the island at Denmark's request. The countries named by Trump on Saturday have backed Denmark, warning that the US military seizure of a territory in NATO could collapse the military alliance that Washington leads. European leaders said on Saturday that, quote, tariffs would undermine transatlantic relations and risk a dangerous downward spiral.
I hate to say it, but this downward spiral started last year, January 20th, 2025. The difference now is that the spiral is now targeting places like Greenland and Europe. I'd also argue that the NATO alliance should already be planning for a scenario where the US tries to take over Greenland. And I'm sure they already have their contingency plans in place. At least I would hope so. But I wanted to end this video by looking back just 1 year. We've seen enormous damage. Economical damage, political, tourism, damage to consumer purchasing, damage in many other areas as well. All of it tied to the man-child and his entire administration. I keep coming back to the same question though. How can anyone still support this country? How can Canadians and international tourists continue to support the US economy while all of this is happening? How can you turn a blind eye to what is clearly right and clearly wrong? We all know people like this. People who don't care. People who don't even follow the news or current events. People who are happily living in the blue pill world. I really don't have an answer for any of this. This is just more me venting in frustration. But I feel like the only way some people will ever wake up from this blue pill fantasy is when it personally affects them. Maybe the US invades Greenland and someone's relative gets killed. Maybe that's when they finally wake up. Or maybe a tourist gets detained by ICE because of mistaken identity. Maybe that's what finally does it for them. But action speaks louder than words and thoughts and prayers. And that goes both ways. In the case of the US government, their action, in my opinion, are irreversible for me. And that's not a short-term thing for me. It's probably for the rest of my life. Okay, that's all I got for today's video. If you found any value in anything I talked about today, help out my channel by hitting the like and subscribe button below. I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you in the next video. Rose, you want to say bye? Okay, that's good enough.